Good day, everybody. Dano from Shuren Press here. MCO 3.0. Let's do our part to stay home and try to flatten the curve. I know it's been the second year, but you know, it is what it is, and we need to try our best. I'd like to remind you that the call for submissions for Shuren Press is still on. That's for the topic Minority Blue, so please check that out if you would like to enter all the details in the last video in the Instagram and the Facebook posts. Today I'd like to talk about a movie that I watched last week, and really I should have watched it sooner. It is Brokeback Mountain from 2006. When I saw it on Netflix, I just thought, why not? And it blew me away. And that made me go back and look at the short story written by Annie Proulx. And I loved absolutely like all of it, especially the ending, which is the inspiration behind today's video. So I'd like to very quickly read the ending and then just talk about it. Okay, so here goes. Around that time, Jack began to appear in his dreams. Jack as he had first seen him, curly-headed and smiling and buck-toothed, talking about getting up off his pockets and into the control zone. But the can of beans, with the spoon handle jutting out and balanced in the log, was there as well, in a cartoon shape and lurid colors that gave the dreams a flavor of comic obscenity. The spoon handle was the kind that could be used as a tire iron, and he would sometimes wake in grief, sometimes with the old sense of joy and release, the pillow sometimes wet, sometimes the sheets. There was some open space between what he knew and what he tried to believe, but nothing could be done about it, and if you can't fix it, you've got to stand it. Okay, so immediately as a former philosophy student, that highlights the difference between epistemology and metaphysics. Epistemology being what he knew, and metaphysics what he tried to believe. So what exactly are those two fields of study? So very quickly, I'm reading this off study.com. Epistemology is basically a theory of knowledge about how we come to know things, knowing as opposed to believing something. So epistemology is the study of knowledge acquisition. It involves an awareness of certain aspects of reality, and it seeks to discover what is known and how it is known. So a big name in philosophy that studies epistemology was Immanuel Kant, with the critique of pure reason. It's an in-depth study about, how human beings come to take in things through the faculties, how they process it through, our categories of understanding. And it's really such a big topic that I can't even begin to explain it. If you like, you can look up Immanuel Kant, great German philosopher. But to focus on today's video, I just want to talk about how poignant this is in the ending. But before that, let's talk about metaphysics for a bit. So meta means beyond, and physics, physical. So it's really about, studies of religion, about specifics versus universals. So the metaphysical lets us theorize about the world around us without sort of having to certify it empirically, which, that's kind of dumbing it down a lot. But so that's its opposition to epistemological studies. So the word epistemology comes from the Greek word episteme. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, or epistastai, which is to know and how to do. So basically, the story, it tells us of this contrast between the two fields, between what we can know and between a belief. And the two characters struggle so much by being a gay couple in 1950s, 1960s, Midwestern America. I think it's Midwestern. I've never been to the US, but the story is set in Wyoming. And I just think it's such a good way to end the story because it highlights um, sort of what they had to go against and what they had to hide because the public around them had these very strong metaphysical beliefs about, you know, judgment from God or you know, condemnation from the church. Um, but you know, it's the ending itself. The ending itself is about Ennis, and it's about what he can know and what he tries to believe. So this is opposed to the judgment he faces throughout from um, society, and at the ending, it's about his inner self. So a lot of people were writing into Annie Proulx to say that they were dissatisfied with the ending, that it was too sad, that they didn't understand why there couldn't be a happy ending between the two characters. And, you know, there's no way it could have been a happy ending because that would have gone against the whole premise of the story, which is these two characters being isolated from this conservative judgment of the people around them. And to say that they could have lived happily ever after, I mean, perhaps, but it just wouldn't have been such a strong ending that hit home and that was poignant and that was impactful, I would say. So let's talk more about Ennis himself at the end of the story. There was an open space between what he knew and what he tried to believe. So this could be him believing that he would see Jack again in the afterlife, and that being contrasted against what he could know, because he has no way of knowing that. But he does believe it. But there's nothing that he can do to make that jump because his time with Jack had passed, and through, you know, it may or may not have been his fault, uh, Jack ended up losing his life. But there was nothing he could do about it. And this line that is, if you can't fix it, you got to stand it. That was this is the second time this line appears in the story. The first time it was after Jack and Ennis were reunited after 4 years, and Jack kind of says like there was a possibility that they could both be living together in a farm, they could work together, spend their lives together, and Ennis kind of says no, you know, there's no way. Um, he knew how from his youth he saw like an old gay couple being killed and murdered because they were living together, and he sort of says like, well, if we can't fix this situation, we have to stand it. Um, so the ending is really kind of the writer's kind of middle finger towards, you know, conservative society. Maybe not so much a middle finger, but it certainly is a critique, and it's such a unique way of bringing up this argument, sorry, not argument, but the difference between um, these two very important fields of study, epistemology and metaphysics. Because if you were to ask, you know, philosophers to explain that, you know, explain this to me, explain that to me, and you give like a definition as I had it before, it wouldn't be so effective, you know. It wouldn't stick with you. And this story is such a good story. It's the ending is so good, and I disagree with all the people who wrote in to to Annie Proulx to tell her like you should have rewritten it, some way, it should have been a happy ending, but that would be to miss the whole point of Brokeback Mountain. And I hope that gives you some things to think about this weekend. And yeah, I'll put a link of the story in the description. And feel free to ask me any questions. I can write more about it in the comments. But yeah, we're going to end it at that. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.